A key is a scale which harmonically anchors the melody. So essentially, a key is just a set of notes that the melody is using. For example, a song in the key of C major will most likely only use the following notes. A song in the key of G major will most likely use these notes. And a song in the key of D minor will most likely use these notes. In the previous video, which I'll link in the description below, we explored how to formulate scales. In this video, I want to focus on how to identify the key of a song. Now look, let's be honest here. The easiest way to find the key of a song would be to just Google it. And experienced musicians can dabble on their chosen instrument to sort of feel the key. But let's say that the piece of music is too complicated to just gut feel the key, or you haven't been playing for 20 years. Fortunately, there are 3 methods that can be used to try to determine the key of a song. The first is key signatures. A key signature, as shown here, is just a bunch of accidentals at the beginning of every staff. Accidentals are just sharps, flats, and naturals. There are others, but that's for another video. As a side note, a natural is just any note that isn't a sharp or a flat. Now the first thing to note when reading a key signature is whether you've got sharps or flats. If you've got sharps, you know the piece is in a natural or a sharp key, and if you've got flats, you know it's in a flat key. The only exception is the key of F major, which has 1 flat. Second thing to note is that every major key has a minor relative. That is to say that every major key has a minor key which shares the same key signature and therefore scale. One way to read a key signature would be to simply count the number of accidentals. So G, for example, is the only major key that contains only 1 sharp, that being F sharp. Another way would be to look at where the accidentals are placed on the staff. So a D major has 2 sharps, and we can see that they are C sharp and F sharp. Just be careful here though, because there are other keys that also have a C sharp and an F sharp, but they will tend to have other sharps as well. If you don't want to memorize all of these key signatures, there's a much easier way to work it out. A simple trick you can use to save time. With sharps, you take note of the very last sharp going from left to right. All you have to do is move 1 step up, and that'll give us the key. Let's take this key signature for example. The sharp furthest on the right is G, and 1 step up from that would be A, thus the key is A major. With flats, it's even easier. Just have a look at the second to last flat from the right. So this key signature, for example, has 4 flats, and the second to last one is A, so our key is A flat major. Remember, if the key has flats, the key will always be a flat key. 2 quick things to note with the methods I just gave you. First, I'll say it again, F major is the exception. Key signature has 1 flat instead of a sharp like the other major keys, and so neither of the tricks we just learnt will work for it. Also, I don't know any tricks to work out the relative minors. Quick side note, you'll notice in this piece of music that although the piece is in the key of G, the F note here doesn't have a sharp next to it. This is because it's kind of just assumed that if you know your scales, you'll know which notes need to be sharp or flat. The only time it would be specified is if the composer specifically wanted to make use of a note outside of the key. This is actually what a natural symbol is for. Also, if I put a C sharp in this bar, it's assumed that every subsequent C in that bar should also be sharpened. Call it laziness if you want, I don't make the rules. Let's move on to chord progressions. This is the second method to work out key signatures. Now this method assumes you don't have sheet music. We start by working out the chord progression. We can either Google this, much easier to do that, or work it out for ourselves if you know how to. Either way, if you know the chord progression, you can very consistently work out the key of the song. Now, I am going to be making a video in this series all about chord progressions, so we won't spend too much time talking about it here. For now, have a look at this chart that I drew up. Basically, every key has its own set of chords that are likely to be used. So, for example, the key of C major uses C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, and B diminished. Don't worry about what these chords are. We'll be looking at chord theory in a future video. Remember, you can always come back to this video after you've learned how to construct chords and chord progressions. For now, I want you to notice that every key has a slightly different list of chords, although each chord does show up in multiple keys. Also note that the list doesn't contain any complicated chords, well, except for diminished chords. The point is, if we know the chord progression, we can use this table to find a match. Now with experience, you'll get to know which chords go with which key without having to use this table. I mean, if I hear A, D, and E, my mind immediately goes to the key of A major. Please understand that this method is not foolproof. There are going to be songs that don't seem to fit nicely with this table. Sometimes chords are substituted for chords outside of the key. Sometimes a song doesn't resolve, meaning that it'll be missing the root chord, or the chord that is the same as the key. Sometimes a song will actually have more than one key. So the verse could be in G major, but maybe the chorus transposes into A major. But these are exceptions. The chord progression is still a very useful method to work out the key of a song. Let's have a look at the last method, scale degrees. A key is basically just a scale, right? So if we write down the notes used in the song, we can match them to a scale to figure out the key. To make your life easier, you'll want to use as many different notes from the melody as you can find. And also, you'll want to put them into alphabetical order. Have a look at this table for reference. And when talking about a scale in reference to the key, we use the term scale degrees. Every key has 7 degrees in its scale, and every degree actually has a name, as shown at the bottom of the table. Chord progressions actually share these terms, but we'll discuss that in a future video, so don't worry about that yet. Just know that every key has a unique set of scale degrees, which makes this a very useful method. Now before I end this video, I want to address why I haven't discussed minor keys very much. First, as I said earlier, every minor key shares a key signature with a major key, so there's some ambiguity there. Second, as we discussed in the previous video, there are 3 minor scales. And when you harmonize those scales separately, that is to say, when you apply chords to each scale, you'll notice that the structure of each chord will sometimes vary for each scale degree. All of that having been said, I hope this video has helped you to better understand key signatures and how they work and how to identify them. I'll see you in the next one.